Good morning again. My name is Denise Thomas. I am founder and owner of the Effective Communication Coach, which is a consultancy based here in Milwaukee, and my office is actually at BizStarts. So I have an office residency there. My company's mission is to transform emerging and existing professionals into extraordinary leaders by mastering the art of effective communication. And I'm smiling in the background. You just can't see it. So I'm very happy to be here with each of you.
And I'm sneaking a drink, so I got my mask off. When did your business start?
I started it in 2015. It became an LLC in 2015. I started full-time all in 2017, so I'm in year 3 now.
Okay. So when she says an LLC, when you register your business, those of you that haven't yet done this, and BizStarts can help you with this, but the more typical thing to happen is either you just be a sole proprietor, or the better thing usually is that you're registered as an LLC, and she's registered as an LLC. So your customers are principally businesses?
I have all types of customers. Anyone, and that's, so let me just clarify too. When I initially started my company, I started as an LLC. So ask questions, and I would recommend that if you don't already.
But the questions are going to focus on this week's topic. So
yep.
We have the whole 6 weeks to cover LLCs and all that. I just want to focus on who your customers are.
Can I just finish my statement, and then I'll get back to
finish them, but
thank you.
So
the LLC is something that I started, but just keep in mind that ask questions because I'm now an S corp. So I just wanted to finish saying that. Yeah. Okay. Yes, sir.
You were going to tell us about your customers.
Yeah, so my customers, one of the things I would recommend is as part of your mission. So again, that's something that BizStarts will be able, they're an excellent resource in terms of putting together, helping you put together your mission statement. So I would encourage each of you to put together a mission statement, because in that mission statement, it's going to allow you to focus on an array of customers. Now, I know many of you have heard, hey, you want to have a target audience in your business. But keep in mind, in today's market right now, in today's climate, you want to make it as, how should I say this, as intentional but also as flexible as possible. So for example, I didn't just say, I only want to work with people who are professionals. I said whether you're emerging or existing, and someone who has a passion or an understanding for effective communication. Does everybody in this room appreciate the ability to effectively communicate?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. So again, you see how I did that? So I didn't necessarily create a filter saying that I only want to work with certain large companies. So I work with nonprofit organizations, for-profit organizations, private, public, smaller, large. I also coach individuals. So my clientele includes people who just want one-on-one coaching, as well as companies who are looking to have someone come in and facilitate at a group level.
So Denise, if we look over the last 12 months, you've served in the last 12 months roughly how many clients?
Oh goodness, that's a good question. The past 12 months, this is what, September? I would say probably 100.
100 customers. And if we took those 100 and we studied them in terms of whether they're businesses or individuals, whether they're male or female, whether they're old or young, would we find any patterns in those 100?
Absolutely, and the pattern is that they all see a value add in terms of using effective communication coaching to help either keep top talent, such as each of you in this room, at their companies, or, for example, right now, just take a guess. What do you think most companies are hiring me to come and do in their organizations? Just take a guess.
Develop their talent.
Yes. Go a little bit further deeper. Like what's been going on in this country right now?
How to communicate through the internet. Diversity and inclusion.
Exactly. So there's two things, and you hit the nail on the head, Ruben. One is, how do I communicate virtually? How do I keep my employees engaged in a virtual environment or workplace? And second, inclusion and equity. Because as we all know, there's a lot of division as it relates to racial diversity in the workplace. And companies are now realizing, especially as people are working from home now, that if we don't start having these conversations about equity and inclusion in the workplace, as it relates specifically to racial diversity, we're not only going to lose people, but it's going to create a liability for us.
Okay, so what are you seeing right now?
Opportunity.
You're in a laboratory looking at specimen A. What are you saying?
Opportunity.
She's always
Selling.
selling. She's always selling. You have to be pushing your business. She's sort of passive about this business, right? No. Can you feel her energy? Okay? And she's been doing this a while, yet, right? So she started to lead us towards this path of segmentation that we talked a little bit about, right? She started to realize I can make more money from the kind of coaching that centers on this sort of thing, diversity, inclusion, as opposed to there's a lot of kind of coaching you could be doing. So we get a bit of a feel for her business. Patrick, could you tell us the same? What was your business? When did you start?
Yeah, so
Who were your customers?
I started a business when I got out of college. I used to literally sell ads for somebody else's newspaper, and I thought, well, if I can sell ads, why couldn't I just sell for myself? So I started a small coupon company called Your Community Coupon Book, and I realized from sitting in Evanston, where I had my office, which was customer funded. Like, I want to point out that everything that I did started from nothing. So basically, I would pre-sell the ads, then I'd go to the printer and give them that money, and then I would distribute the book using the customer's money. And then as I sold more and more ads and more people saw the Your Community Coupon Book, it started to kind of take off. So I was sitting in Evanston and I realized there was a place down the street called Northwestern University. And I saw the opportunity that I could get free writers that were going to be future Pulitzer Prize winners. And I thought to myself, well, I can get free writers and create this magazine. And it was a very exciting journey for me because I had the thing, like Michael had mentioned, where I got to hire people in the community and be a big part of just spreading the good news about everything that was going on Chicago's North Shore.
Okay. And so who did you find so you had two kind of customers, right? Did you have advertisers?
Yeah, we had advertisers, and then we did distribution for free, and this was 30 years ago, so we were literally the first free paper in the area. And that was good because I had hired somebody and I literally gave them a piece of the company because I didn't know how to design the magazine. So I brought on a guy named Tom Miller, and then what Tom did was he was a digital publisher, which meant that our magazine looked a lot better than the ones that were typeset and more expensive in the area. So what was the original question?
I was just trying to get at just like
Yeah, we had paid customers, but we also did a thing where if I really wanted someone in the magazine, I would trade them advertising for whatever I wanted to get from them. And I'll give you two really quick examples. One is there was a place called the Multiplex in Deerfield, Illinois, where the Chicago Bulls worked out. And I went to talk to Hazel Gillets, and you always have to be selling and making sure that you're getting customers. But I told her, look, we have the magazine here, it's popular, like people pick it up. How about I trade you an ad for a membership? Well, she said, yeah, that sounds good because the membership doesn't cost her anything and she knows that she's going to be in a popular publication around the thing. Well, she let the gypsy in the castle because every single person in that club was rich and I wasn't. But I could act rich because I was on the inside now. So trading for customers is sometimes
What's
good
the
too.
principle here? Leveraging resources, using other people's resources. I'm still trying to nail you on your customers.
Oh, it was
you have
B2B.
advertisers, right?
Mhm.
but there are all kinds of advertisers out there that are never going to advertise in this publication. This doesn't fit. So how did you figure, just like figuring, there's a whole market out there for diversity and inclusion kind of coaching. How did you figure what's the right kind of audience that ultimately I can make money from?
Yeah, so the first my mom was a hairdresser, so the first people I went to were hairdressers. So I got lucky, and there was a place called Teddy Kossoff Salon and Spa that's in Northrop, Illinois. And he had one pain point that he had is that Pioneer Press and North Shore Magazine that were in the area, he had different businesses in that building. So he literally, they'd make him buy an ad for all the different businesses, and I said, we can do a group ad for the whole thing. But he said, you're getting the best of everything on the North Shore, for me. And I agreed with him, and then I created that tagline, best of everything on the North Shore. Well, the great thing about that is that I had to focus on businesses that were considered great already. And when they saw that the Multiplex was running, which was a trade ad, and the Teddy's Salon was running, which was a friend, basically, they jumped on the bandwagon. So I was walking around with a prototype of the magazine, and then saying, by the way, these are the businesses that are running. And they were like, well, if Teddy's running and Multiplex is running and the polls are there, why wouldn't I run in this magazine? And so I focused on the best of everything on the North Shore.
So Patrick sort of opened the door for us. One of the things we talked about this morning was it's one thing to sort of teach bookkeeping, teach marketing, teach operations, but the real issue is how to develop within each of us that entrepreneurial mindset. How's that work for you? I mean, how important is it to think entrepreneurially, act entrepreneurially?
That's a great question. Here's the thing, the biggest in terms of having an entrepreneurial mindset for me. So how many of you all right now are working for a company? You're working for a company. Okay, how many of you have either now or worked for a company prior to today? You've worked for, okay. So the reason why I ask you that is because as human beings that have worked for the majority of our lives for somebody else or for a company, we have a certain conditioning. And I can't be prescriptive because each of you as individuals, you know what that is. So for example, for me, working 17 years for somebody else or for large companies such as Molson Coors, GE Healthcare, PepsiCo, I was always used to having my performance measured. Or I was always used to, being at a certain place or a certain time, doing things that weren't really part of my passion, but it was this conditioning. People putting you in a box. People, assuming because of how you look, whether it's your race, your age, putting you in a box. So I was conditioned for 17 years. So when I started my business, initially during those first 2 years, I found myself seeking for permission when I'm the boss. So one of the things that and when I say this, I mean, don't go into the business being conceited or thinking that you're better than someone, because I know that no one in this room has that. But what you have to be able to do as part of the entrepreneurial mindset is make decisions. Set ground rules for your business based on what's going to be successful and what's going to help you show up at your best every day. Does that make sense? Because you're going to find yourself in those literally the first year, you're going to find yourself waiting for something or questioning your bossness. And for me, I'm just now within year 5 technically, or year 3 technically, year 5, starting to know who I am. And as a black woman growing up in Indiana, living in Wisconsin, I've always had to prove myself. So as you can already tell during the first 5 minutes of this interview, I know who I am. I'm the boss. So that's the first thing you need to do. Yes. Oh, inside out? Thank you. Teamwork.
So that was an incredibly insightful answer to the question. Patrick, you described it in terms of some of your clever tactics and things you did, but how would you characterize the entrepreneurial mindset?
Well, first of all, it doesn't come easy. Like, I made plenty of mistakes and stuff that you look back on, and hindsight's 20/20, right? So it's very much what you're talking about. It's this journey where basically, I was a goofy kid who didn't want to work for someone else and knew how to sell ads and turned it into a magazine, but there was a lot of super awkward moments where where I'd make 50 calls in a day and not sell a single ad, and wonder if I was going to eat that next day, because my mom said, if you do this, don't come looking to me for any money and don't ask any of my friends. Like, it's an eat what you kill world, so you got to go out there and do it, and you're going to have days where it's terrible. And it develops the mindset though, because you become so resilient from getting beaten up that you get strong.
Okay, great. So one of the other themes that we talked a little bit about is how what you start out to create becomes something different. What becomes sustainable, your core product may change, your target market may change, your whole approach to pricing or operations may change. Is that sort of emergent quality in your experience?
Oh, absolutely. For me, in terms of the evolution of my business, I started out thinking of kind of like a grocery store. I'm dating myself. Y'all remember when you go to the grocery store and they'd have the samples? And as kids, we'd be like, I'll be right back, Mom. I'm gonna go find where the samples are. So for me, the first phase was giving people a sample of what you would experience hiring me. And then I would work pro bono. Now, mind you, I was still working at Miller Coors. It's Molson now, but it was Miller Coors at the time. I was still working there, so I was able on the weekends and the evenings to provide my services at a heavily discounted rate. So I went from samples to now discounted rate. Then what do you think started happening? And this is kind of what we call small walking. So people started talking. That's the wonderful thing about word of mouth. I don't have to advertise as much because I use the sampling and the heavily discounted services, because y'all know here in Milwaukee, people do this. So now my name is starting to spread, and then it's starting to get to companies, and corporations started, saying, hey, we heard good things about you. Can you come in? Then I'm now at the introductory rate. So remember, I went from sample to discount to now introductory rate. Then once people start, and that's the thing, I had 100 clients over the past year, but right now I have about 10. You know why? Because I went from quantity to quality. Now I can just have 10 clients that are retaining me for multiple services in one contract. And that's when the big bucks start coming in. So you're working hard, but you don't have as many touch points, if that makes sense. You got maybe 10 versus 100. So just take it in phases. And this is one more thing I'll say, and I know we got to go to Patrick. Know your worth. I could not tell you how many clients I've had where they want to tell me how much they're going to charge me. So this is what I say, because again, you want to be humble. I'm being very candid with y'all, but you want to be humble, especially if you look like me, because you don't want, I'm just being honest with y'all. Your time is valuable, so I want to be as candid as possible. So perception is reality, so I always have to make sure that based on how I look, I come a certain way. So if they say, hey Denise, I'm giving a dummy number, we want to pay you $10,000, and I know what you're asking me to do is 50, then I say, okay, here's what you would get for 50,000. Here's what you'll get for 20. And when they see the difference in terms of deliverables, what do you think they usually say? Let's look at the 50, and even if they can't, if their budget isn't towards the 50, they'll at least do what? They'll start to negotiate. So I may have started at 50, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, I'll probably do it for 35 or 40. They don't know that, but they know I'm not the $20,000.
She's being for real, because the checks get delivered to our office, and I put them on her desk.
What point is Denise picking up on that we talked about today? gotta, she's here and giving her time, but not to speak to you, but to help you with your businesses. What is she telling you?
I'd love to sell.
She's telling you to charge based on value, not based on cost, right? She's saying, she didn't just sit there and say 50,000 because it'll take me this many hours, and this. She's saying, what's the customer getting, and what's it worth? And I'm not going to compromise beyond a certain range on what I'll do there. So
I threw you off, didn't I? You just don't even know what to think now. 50,000. Careful.
Who is mine, Denise?
I have that effect.
I want to become her partner. so your point about the pricing is part of a bigger message, which is.
Well, let me just say this. I'm commerce driven. So that means, like there's different things that will motivate each of you. And I want you to be very honest with yourself. For me, I like making money. I don't want to ever not have money that I can take care of my family and my loved ones. So for me, if it's not making money, it's not making sense. So I don't, yeah.
Can I ask you about that?
Yeah, absolutely.
She's saying two things. I want to make money, right? I want my prices to reflect my value, right? You also want to be sure you can deliver that value. Mm-hmm. So what has she done? She's moved from quantity to quality, from 100 to 10 customers. So how much? We talked about the difference between what we call a survival, a lifestyle, of managed growth, and aggressive growth venture. 100% growth a year is not what you're seeking, right? What is an acceptable rate of growth for you?
Oh man, you're asking really good questions. I'll say this. For me, from a profit margin standpoint, it has to be for me double digits. I always create audacious goals for myself, because the more audacious that your goals are, even if you meet half of that, you're still going to see growth, whether it's monetary, clients, presence in the market, whatever that looks like for you, however you're measuring your success, be very audacious. So for me, it may not necessarily be 100%, but it definitely will be in at least 2 digits. It has to be for me.
But the growth that you're describing is what? She's not saying I'm going to double the number of customers. She's saying I'm going to
money. Yes.
Right. That's what I'm growing. So I've asked probably too many questions. What do you want to know?
Yes, I want to hear from the people. I'm here for y'all. Any questions you want to ask me? Anything?
I know her. I was in there.
Hi, how are you? Good to see you again.
Oh, yeah, that's she's good.
Thank you.
So I want to give her a shout out because I know her. So she's good. So
I appreciate that.
Well, I have a question. So I'm in a coaching business too. I'm doing life and weight loss. I transitioned from my job.
I need you.
What's that?
I need you. Especially the weight loss, but yes.
Yeah, so I was just wondering, like you said, you kind of started out doing pro bono. How did you, I guess my question is, how did you get how'd you get yourself out there?
Great question. I wish.
I'm just going to repeat
Sure,
the question
sure.
because they're filming it as well.
Sure.
So the question was, you did this pro bono work initially, but how did you transition to paying customers and maybe better paying customers?
Yeah, I wish I'd known about BizStarts when I first started. So I highly recommend whatever relationship that you have now with BizStarts, or if you don't, please utilize BizStarts. I'm not just saying that because I'm friends with Patrick, but I've said this publicly. BizStarts was a critical asset to the launching of my business. Before I knew about BizStarts, because I worked for Molson Coors, which is Miller Brewing at the time, I was very intentional about So I made it a win-win. So most companies, large companies, have what they call business resource groups or employee resource groups. And they have committees. So I strategically joined the community outreach committee. Why do you think I joined the community outreach committee? The networking. So now let me just say this. I met with the Miller Coors Human Resources and Legal team when I started my LLC, now S-Corp. And I met with them, and I think I shared this with Ruben. I was very transparent and said, I'm looking to start a business. Will this be a problem? Now, who did I say I met with?
HR.
And who else?
HR.
HR and legal, because I didn't want no, you know what. So I met with them, told them, and they were like, that's great. Hey, as long as you don't speak at an event that we're sponsoring and get paid, we're good. So what was the underlying message to me now? I have permission to network as the community outreach chair. And that's exactly how I did it. So it's all like, this entrepreneurial thing, it is not checkers. It is all chess. It is so strategic. And you gotta make those moves.
So you minimized your risk right away, right?
What's your name?
Krista?
Krista, did you hear what she said? She said it perfectly. I minimized my risk right away. I was ahead. That's what chess is. I stayed ahead of the game, so I was like, all I need for somebody to say, hey, you know, Denise Thomas was speaking at this event, and doesn't she work for Miller Coors? We ain't having that. That's why I met with, and when I met with HR and legal, who do you think I met with in HR and legal?
The head.
The head. And if you can't get to the chief legal officer or the chief HR officer, then you find the person that reports to them and say, I need to speak with, start at the top. Trust me, it's worth it. If it takes you a month to get to the top, then take that month. But that was how I started, you know, with the pro bono.
So on that risk point, one of the issues we talked about earlier on today was not so much focusing on the upside potential, but trying to minimize the downside loss. So if things had gone south, what's the most you could have lost?
My job at Miller Coors. And when I left, and notice I said I left, they weren't surprised. They were supportive of me. And even before I left, they used my services. So like I would MC different summits and different all teams meetings. So it was a mutual love. And I already knew that we both knew that when I told them I was starting my business, they knew it was what? It was a matter of time. So nobody at that point, no bridges were burned. We still have a great relationship. I'm friends with the CEO and his wife, or her, Gavin's wife. So you never want to burn bridges. Always think about, because I may need to come back. Oh, by the way, they reached out to me to do some consulting for them. This was probably about 2 or 3 months ago. So
I want to let you get a word in, Patrick. So
Well, on the risk thing is that you really need to spend as little money as possible. You literally, when you're doing a lifestyle or
As little of your
something
own
going
money as possible.
spend as little money as possible. The second thing is that you have to verify that whatever product you're selling can get customers. And the best way to fund in my opinion, the best way to fund your venture is with your customers' money.
Yes, ma'am.
I was just going to say, I actually retired December of last year.
congratulations.
Thank you. I have 26 years of HR experience as a practitioner and then 15 years of teaching. So I knew that I wanted to leave. So I started my business in 2017. And I took 2018 and 2019 to invest. Because I had a business plan, profit structure, and everything laid out. I even had 2 really lucrative contracts that were referrals on the table.
That's awesome.
And then COVID hit. And so now I'm sitting here, I'm in my office, what am I going to do? I really appreciate the fact that you focused on knowing your work and knowing your values. So where I had planned to do more workshops, more training, working with targeted set audience, actually COVID, though it was a bad thing, it happened to be a blessing for me, because now I'm getting all kinds of referrals for equity, diversity, and inclusion, as well as HR HR compliance reviews. So where I had a problem with, I knew what to charge for the HR compliance reviews, I really understood that. But now with the diversity and inclusion and the companies that I'm working for, clearly I won't get involved unless it is a strategic process, meaning they're going to commit 3 years. Because I don't do knee-jerk reactions, and if you just go in and just do a workshop, it's not tied to anything, it's not going to work, right, in this climate or period. So my problem is pricing for the 3-year contract. I have a meeting on Monday, and I have a meeting on Friday, and they sought me out, and they really want to work with me, and I have not a clue as to how I should really price.
So there are a lot of variables that go into pricing that it'd be nice to know the answers to, but what, on the surface at least, advice would you give?
Go ahead. You want me to start? Okay. Well, the first thing I would say to you, and what's your name?
Jacqueline.
Jacqueline? All right, thanks for being here, Jacqueline. The first thing I would say to you is go ahead and take those like knee-jerk opportunities. Now keep in mind, this is what I do. I'll tell companies when they come to me and I feel like they just want to check in the box, I'll go ahead and take it, but I'll say that in the contract that part of our mutual agreement is that after the session, I have a meeting with your decision makers. And then we meet and then I say, you know, this is something that needs to be, like whatever the value proposition in terms of the long term. Because when you said 3 years, I'm gonna be honest with you, Jacqueline, I was like, that sounds like a long time. And right now, based on where we are right now, we're taking stuff literally like day by day. The longest term that I've been hearing from companies right now, because everything is so conscious oriented and it's so indefinite, is maybe like 6 months to a year.
In my case, one of the companies, and again, it's leveraging resources. It was a recommendation to my cousin, but it is actually the Western Michigan probationary division. And so with that said, they already know the issues that they have internally. They understand the implications that it has on their employees and their performance as it relates to their clients. So the 3 years is not a problem.
Right. In addition, I'm saying that in addition to that, like for other clients, so that's one.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So as far as the pricing goes, for me, I'll say this. Don't just think about the deliverable that you're going to provide in terms of the actual like event. So think about the work that you're going to take to put together the materials, the learning materials, whatever pre-work as well as post-work. And then here's the thing. I always, in my contracts, I'll say as part of the deliverables, you'll have this many 30-minute pre-sessions, this many post-sessions. Then in the back of my mind, I'm also thinking about emails. Because your clients will email you. They'll be like, okay, we can't meet with Denise, but we can sure email her. So when I think about how much time it takes for me to stop, answer the email, clients, they'll have like 3 or 4 questions in one email. And so that's time. So just think about pricing in terms of the whole, like front end, actual work, and then the post deliverables.
Yeah, let me just throw in 2 other considerations very quickly. One would be early stages of your business. How much will getting this contract be something that will enhance your reputation, where you can get a testimonial from this client or whatever? That would be a consideration in pricing. And second would be, this is an issue that will come up in the week on marketing, but the extent to which your customers are more transactional or relational. So if it's a client that you can build, and that's a little bit what Denise is talking about, where there's the potential for ongoing business from the client, now they understand your value and they understand what they have to pay for your value, you might approach that a little differently from the pricing standpoint. We're almost out of time, so I just want to let a couple other people ask some questions. Yes.
With COVID happening and you doing more in person and then now transitioning into virtual, how hard was it for you to pivot your whole transition and going into a virtual capacity?
It wasn't, because I stayed ready. I was already doing virtual sessions, and then I'd already had an existing client base to where I was like, okay, now that we're virtual, here are my options. Here are the options that I can provide for you. And here's the thing. A lot of us feel like we're losing control. We're not losing control. We got to reinvent it. Your why has not changed. Your why will never change. It's just your how has to be ready for. That's why I was like, the 3 years, I feel you, but we don't, seriously, like think about it right now. Can you even imagine where we're going to be at in 3 years from right now? I don't even know. So I just make sure that, so like right now I'm getting a certification from UW Milwaukee to be a master trainer facilitator in a virtual. So I'm about to create my own online university so that even when I'm speaking, I can still get PayPal notifications. Hello, yes ma'am.
So my question is more about your mindset, because I like what you said, to stay humble, right? And so how do you balance knowing the competition, right? So that competitive spirit with your passion and staying humble and staying really like in your own lane. How do you balance that in your head to where ego doesn't take over and it becomes something that doesn't exist?
Great question. What is your name?
Danielle.
Danielle, of course, because it starts with a D. You are your biggest competitor. I don't worry about competition. I'm my biggest competitor because I'm always thinking about how can I grow my business even further. So just think about it. There's Myers, there's Target, there's Pick and Save. So instead of me worried about Target and Pick and Save, there's room for everybody. So I'm just worried about what I'm doing every day. And the humility comes into acknowledging everybody. So like Patrick, Sarah, we're not on a formal team. They don't work for me. I don't work for them. But the humility comes in. Sarah, thank you so much for informing me that I have mail versus me having to come to the office every day. Thank you. Patrick, thank you for allowing me to have a residency at BizStarts. And then we you know, like,
She
I don't
does
mind doing
stuff
this.
for you for us, which is awesome. She's our
Yes.
MC at our annual event, and she always does a great job, and I appreciate that while we're sharing the love.
Sounds like leveraging.
Yeah, relationships.
You've said something very important. And this is something I see in working with a lot of folks like you. She said something about competition, and I just want to pick up on that. What worries me about many of the entrepreneurs I talk to is they act like there's no competition. Say, well, I'm different, I'm unique, I'm positioned. There's always competition. And she did not say, I ignore the competition. She said, I don't worry about the competition. But she knows they're there. And I bet there must be opportunities to learn from best practices or mistakes or things they're doing not good that you can have. So it's not that you ignore the competition, right?
Well, I just don't have competition. I have what you just described for me is part of my network. I'm not competing against anybody. I don't have competition. My competition is me. And so the people that are like, if I'm Target and the people that are Myers and Walmart and et cetera, there's a customer for everybody. And I can't necessarily be the right person or the right consultant for everybody. So for me, it's either you're part of my network or you're not. I'm just being honest. I do not think of anything outside of what I am and what I do as competition. And it has nothing to do with being arrogant or narcissistic. It's just that is a distraction. That's a disruption for me to grow.
So we're going to finish with one. I'll let you get it in. But one question I want to make sure we do get in. So we have people here who have product-based businesses. In this case, candles. We have businesses that are service-based, are selling a service, right? You had a product. You have a service. With that in mind, can you give an overall piece of advice to our entrepreneurs?
Uh,
She wanted you to do it so she could think for a minute.
So, okay. No, because I did a video about a year ago and I did my top 12 lessons learned and it got like over 3,000 likes and 5,000 views. And I was thinking of how I could share that. So maybe I could just send that to you, Patrick.
Yeah.
But I'll just say this, know your worth. Only surround yourself with people who believe in you and want to see you succeed. Don't take advice from people who don't do what you do and don't do it better. Because everybody, as soon as you tell somebody then everybody's an expert. 4, reprogram your mindset so that it's not corporate or it's not I work for somebody. It's I'm the boss. I have to make decisions and that's what I do. And then number 5, stay humble. Stay humble, and thank you goes a long way. Like right now, and I can't believe it's October. So November is when I'm going to start thinking about the clients who I need to tell, like, thank you, and the people who I need to say thank you. Thank you goes a long, long way. So don't forget to say thank you.
Okay, great, good.
Those are all excellent, yeah. So I would say that purpose should drive your thinking, that your aspiration should be, your dream should fit your vision. And, you know, I'll give you a BizStarts for instance, is that the board and I decided that we were going to create the greatest program in the world for entrepreneurship in adversity. That was the dream. But the reality is that now how do we do this, you know? And one of the things is we went out and got Michael. And we knew that, you know, from my days at USASB, which was the largest organization in the world for faculty that teach entrepreneurship, I went around asking who does it the best, and they sent me to Michael. And we were able to have that big dream, but then you need to do whatever you can to make sure that that big thing that you said you're going to do actually happens. So start with a big vision and then do the blocking and tackling until you get there.
Yeah. I promise let me give you a question, so.
Okay. Hello, my name is Dee, owner of Black Gold. So my question for you, you mentioned, and I'm asking this now because there's quite a few of us, like us, and going into certain situations, Black women are known to have big personalities.
Angry, just keep it real.
Right, we're labeled.
Right.
And
Yep.
we have big personalities. And sometimes when you're walking into corporate situations like you are, or meeting with different business owners that don't look like us, don't have any personality like us, how do you handle that?
Great. Y'all asked some great questions. So the biggest deficit between Black women and decision makers, which primarily are white men, is relationships. So the one thing that I want everyone in this room, because this room is extremely diverse. We have different races and ethnicities. We have women, and we also have people who are outside of a certain generation that is marketable, as they would say. Build relationships now, and make sure that you're very intentional about building relationships with people who don't look like you. Because I can assure you that the reason why white men continue to dominate is because they're very good at, hey, let's go to the golf course and let's talk. So if you know all the decision makers are at the golf course, then where do you need to be? At the golf course. And then once you build those relationships, and you know, I was just having a conversation about this yesterday. People like to work with people they like to work with. Mm-hmm. And so if you go into the door cold and it's just like, hey, here's my product, they're gonna listen to you, but then they're gonna reach out to the people that they like. Period. Mm-hmm. So for me as a Black woman, I probably got more white friends than Patrick. I probably, out of those white friends, I would say easily 75 to 80% of them are male. So D, take an inventory of your network. Like literally, everybody take an inventory of your network. And if most of the people in your network look like you, then you have work to do.
Mm-hmm. I have one more comment on that.
What do I consider my network?
Who is considered your network when you say your network?
My network is my net worth. So if you are not killing the game like me, then you're not in my network. And network doesn't mean monetary. Ruben is in my network. Because Ruben, when I see Ruben, I see me. I see somebody who's mission driven, who wants to serve his community, and is determined. Anytime there's an event that BizStarts is having, Ruben is there, front row, or maybe second row. So he's in my network. When he emails me or texts me, I'm stopping what I'm doing because, again, I see myself in Ruben. And I know Ruben's gonna blow up. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question? Yeah, take an inventory of your network. If everybody in your network looks like you, trust me, it's gonna be a long struggle.
I'll add one thing to that. If you're in the B2B sales, you want to be around your customer. You want your network to be who your potential customers are. So the magazine sold ads to hotels and restaurants mainly. And I joined both associations, and then when they had committee work to do or they had things that needed to get done, I was the first one to raise my hand. And then when I went in to sell them advertising, they realized I worked my ass off for that industry. So they threw me a bone. And you need to get around your customers and be in the network that those customers are in.
So,
And do good work while you're there.
I think it's important, Dean, whether it's joining the Rotary, whether it's joining a women's business group, do that sort of thing. Has this been great?
Yeah.
Fantastic. So,